Yeah, I was,
Dr. Terry Wahls, we're so excited to have you.
hey, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here as well.
So, you've had quite the journey from multiple sclerosis and
Yeah,
healing it and all the above. I would love for you to take us back and from your
yeah.
first, take us back.
So,
Yes.
so let's go over the journey. In retrospect, this begins during medical school. I have some twinges of pain at my temple on my left or my right, more troublesome during when I've not slept, more stress. And over the next 20 years, these pains are more frequent, more severe, and more difficult to get turned off. Then about 25 years ago, out walking with my wife Jackie, a half mile from home, my left leg grows weak. Dragging it, I hobble home. I
Wow.
see the neurologist who says, Terry, this could be bad or really, really bad. So at night, while I'm going through the workup, I'm thinking about the 20 years of worsening electrical face pain. And I'm praying secretly for a fatal diagnosis because I don't want to become disabled. 3 weeks later, I hear multiple sclerosis. I do my research. I find the best MS center in the country, the best physician, take the newest drugs. And 3 years later, I hear tilt, recline, wheelchair. I ask myself, am I really doing all that I can? I go back to reading the basic science, paper after paper. I decide that mitochondrial dysfunction is what drives disability. And I devise a supplement cocktail for my mitochondria. The speed of my decline slows. I'm very grateful, but I am still declining. I discover a study using electrical stimulation of muscles. I ask my physical therapist, can I try that? He calls it e-stim. He says it's for athletes. And yes, he can grow bigger muscles for me, but he's not sure my brain can talk to those bigger muscles. He does give me a test session. It hurts really bad, but when it's over, I feel great. And we add e-stim to my physical therapy. I do 10 minutes because that if I do any longer than that, I can't function to go to work.
And the e-stim, they literally attach it to your head.
No, no, no. They're attaching it to my legs
Okay.
and to my belly and my back. At that point, I am so weak, Melissa. I cannot sit up in a regular chair like I am now. I'm in a zero gravity chair with my knees higher than my nose. That's how I staff the resident clinic. That's how I take my meals at home. I'm beginning to have brain fog. And as already mentioned, my electrical face pain, trigeminal neuralgia is getting relentlessly worse, more difficult to turn off. And so the future that I'm looking at, Melissa, is that I'll become bedridden by my illness, because I'm already very close. I will become demented by my illness, because I can tell that brain fog is happening. And my chief of staff has assigned me to the traumatic brain injury clinic. I'll start that in a few weeks. And he had described the job. I'll be seeing patients without residents. And my wife and I know that I don't have the strength to do what he's described. So he's really forcing my hand to take medical retirement. So I start this, and I had this big aha, Melissa. What if I redesign the paleo diet that I've been doing for 5 years based on this long list of supplements that I've been taking? So that was a few more months of research to get that sorted out. And I start this new way of eating December 26, 2007. Now, for context, at that point, I can take a few steps using 2 walking sticks. I can't sit up. I'm in a zero gravity chair with my knees higher than my nose. And I have, much more severe trigeminal neuralgia. January comes, I go to this new clinic. Fortunately, the first 2 weeks, I just have to watch and see what my partners are doing. The third week, I have to start seeing patients. So when I came home Monday, after that first day, I tell Jack, it wasn't too bad. And then when I come home on Friday after having done it all week, I say, I think I can do this, honey. And could I sit up in a regular chair for supper? So we get that a regular chair and I have supper with my family. First time in years. And at the end of January, my physical therapist says, Terry, you're stronger. Let's advance your exercises. You could do 10 minutes twice a day, then 15 minutes twice a day, then 20 minutes twice a day, then half an hour twice a day. And then I start walking in the hallways with my 2 walking sticks,
Wow.
and then with 1 walking stick. And then, you know, I begin walking around the block. And I tell Jackie, could I try? Do you think I could try riding my bike? Which I haven't done in 6 years. She says, honey, if things keep going well, maybe in the fall. And a couple weeks later, on Mother's Day, I really want to try riding my bike. So we have this emergency family meeting, and Jack tells my 16-year-old boy, who's 6'5", Zach, you run alongside on the left. And she tells my 13-year-old daughter, Zebby, you run alongside on the right, and she'll follow. And I get on my bike, and I bike around the block, and Zach, that big boy, he's crying. Zebby, she's crying. Jackie's crying. And when I relive that moment, tears still come, because that is when, the current understanding of multiple sclerosis, I knew it was incomplete, and like how much recovery might be possible. And after that, I biked a little bit more every day. And then in October, Jackie comes home and says, honey, I've signed us up for the Courage Ride. It's 18.5 miles. However far you go will be a triumph. Now, at that point, the farthest I'd gone was 8 miles. But I crossed that finish line.
Wow.
Of course, we're all crying again. The kids are crying, Jackie's crying, I'm crying. And this fundamentally changes how I think about disease and health, because, if you have secondary progressive multiple sclerosis, what I was taught and what I was told by every physician that I'd seen is, once you are in the progressive phase, functions once lost never come back, never come back. And so I'd done all of that, not to get better, because I knew I couldn't get better. I'd done all of that to slow my decline, because I still had my hands. I could still feed myself. I could still wipe my own butt. That's really valuable stuff.
Yeah, it is.
Particularly when you're thinking like, oh my God, you might be losing it. It is incredibly valuable to feed yourself, incredibly valuable to wipe your own butt. And so I was remarkably better walking around, but I was still in the learning I had accepted my life one day at a time. And so even though I was walking around again, I was still in the one day at a time. I didn't know what it meant until I rode my bike. Like, I don't know how much recovery might be possible. And that was 2008. I kept working at it. I kept, fine tuning my self-care routine, kept doing my rehab. And now I can jog.
Wow.
Not far, but not fast, but I am jogging.
It's more than me.
And in 2007, I could not sit up. So I'm a beacon of hope to everyone who has a severe disabling disease, whose physicians have said, there's nothing more I can do. Even if they're saying there's something I can do, but I can't make you better. Well, I'm here to tell you that there's always stuff you can do. There is always stuff you can do to make your circumstances better.
There is a lot to unpack here, and that is such an incredible story. And I'm so grateful I have the opportunity to hear it firsthand from you. So let's take it back. Before this issue started coming up with your leg, you said you had some pain around your head.
Yeah, right. So electrical face pain, if you've ever put your finger across an electrical wire, or your finger across the prongs when you plug something in and you get that jolt, electrical jolt, imagine having a cattle prod right here at your temple, shooting 10,000 volts just for a second. And it's very, very intense. And trigeminal neuralgia is described as the most intense pain that is known to humanity.
And at this point, you didn't know you had multiple sclerosis. You
Correct.
thought it was a different.
So, I endured the pain for several years before I finally, because, during medical school and residency, life is too busy to go take care of yourself. So it wasn't until I was in private practice that I finally went to see a neurologist, and we started trying a variety of drugs. And I developed a drug rash. None of them worked. And so I was just like, okay, I'm just going to have to endure this. And they practically come. Eventually, I got to the pain clinic and was put on gabapentin. And but the problem was, it did not completely turn it off. So I'd go to the pain clinic, get injections, and would have, 2 to 6 weeks of this intense electrical pain to deal with. And it's like, okay. And I'd watched my father have a peripheral nerve version of this problem, mononeuritis multiplex, and I'd seen him endure 25 years of worsening pain. So I'm like, okay. I'd seen my father go through this. I knew that my face pain was going to become progressively more severe and become unmanageable, just as I'd seen it happen to my father. And I'd put that together, in the 1990s, like, okay, this is going to keep getting more and more troublesome.
This is even more interesting because the fact that your father had the same face,
Yeah.
a lot of people
Oh,
would
no,
write
it
it off.
is the leg pain. He is a peripheral nerve. And when I asked my neurologist, they kept saying, no, different diseases, they're not related. And I'm thinking, no, they're related. It's sort of the same process. It may be a different location in the body. And even now, the neurology community would say, different disease, it's an autoimmune disease of your peripheral nerve. The trigeminal neuralgia is an autoimmune disease of the central nervous system. And if you look at the basic principles of, from a functional medicine standpoint, what I teach is you have to stop the autoimmune process. And it may be attacking different parts of the body. And if you don't stop the autoimmune processes, new autoimmune diseases will develop every 5 to 10 years. And so, it started with the trigeminal nerve. Then I had the optic nerve episode 7 years later. And they still didn't put it together for MS. And then when I had leg weakness, probably due to a lesion in my spinal cord, then they make the diagnosis.
Wow. It's
And if we look at the history, we now know that many of these autoimmune diseases have a prodrome of diseases and symptoms that if you have them, you're at much higher risk of developing multiple sclerosis, rheumatoid arthritis, systemic lupus, inflammatory bowel disease. And in that prodrome is migraine headaches, which I have, asthma, which I had, mild exercise-induced asthma, a few some skin issues. I have mild psoriasis on my elbows, pelvic pain, endometriosis, which I had, infertility, which I had to go through IVF to have my kids, and anxiety, depression. So I didn't have anxiety, but ever since adolescent, I've struggled with depression. And so if we look at the prodrome, there were signs that I had prodrome issues starting as an adolescent, probably at age 13.
So you believe that autoimmunities kind of expand on one another if not treated and dealt with properly.
Mhm.
By treated and dealt with properly, not band-aiding it, but really
Oh yeah, we absolutely see that. So you'll come in, get the first set of symptoms, get an often after 5 to 10 years of symptoms, and finally there's enough structural damage that you meet diagnostic criteria for an autoimmune disease. And then you may get started on one of the new biologic, highly effective drugs for that autoimmune disease that can turn off the attack of the organs that are being damaged. The brain, if it's multiple sclerosis, the joints, if it's rheumatoid arthritis, the bowels, if it's inflammatory bowel disease. But if we don't get to the root causes of why you've developed your autoimmune disease, the autoimmune processes will continue attacking other structures. And then you may end up with a skin problem, psoriasis, or a thyroid problem with Hashimoto's. Or, if you start off with inflammatory bowel disease, then you end up with optic neuritis and you can't see, and eventually figure out that now you're developing multiple sclerosis. And then if you have two systemic autoimmune diseases and you're on two different autoimmune disease modifying treatments, the likelihood of increased frailty is great. The likelihood of no longer being able to live independently is great. And certainly if you have a systemic autoimmune disease for multiple sclerosis, the average time to job loss is 7 years. If you do manual work, 3 years. I don't know the stats for rheumatoid arthritis or inflammatory bowel disease, but I predict they're very similar.
Wow. This is
And the reason you leave your job has to do with, most commonly, worsening anxiety, worsening depression, worsening brain fog, and difficulty navigating, the complicated social relationships and the thinking tasks that we have to do in our working environment.
Now, do you believe through your series of trials and tribulations and obviously getting to the bottom of this, do you feel that you've identified the root cause, or do you think you
Oh,
found
well, sure. And so for me, I can sort of look back, and my thinking of this continues to evolve. I'm born vaginally in the 1955. Breastfeeding was not so common, so I was bottle fed. So although I came vaginally, got the right dose of microbes in my mouth, but I was bottle fed, so I didn't get the fiber that you'd get in breast milk. So I didn't have necessarily the best microbiome. Then I had several rounds of strep throat, and I got antibiotics. I'm very grateful, because valvular heart disease is a terrible thing too. So I didn't get those complications. But we now know that those early antibiotics before the age of 3 disrupt the microbiome. And so we had that problem. And then, I'm a farm kid, grew up in a family farm, lots of great things with that. Great for your microbiome to be around all those animals, all that manure.
Yeah.
It's really good. It's really good for you. But we also know that in Iowa, 80% of the wells, private wells, are contaminated with atrazine, which is a herbicide, which is banned in Europe because of its carcinogenic and bad things that it does for you. Now, in addition, I'm an artist, and so I was doing a lot of oil painting in high school, and so that gives you some heavy metal exposure. I also did metallurgy in college, so now I got lead exposure. And then when I went into medical school, I was so thrilled to be dissecting cadavers, human bodies, which is sort of, what every artist dreams of. So I probably have 3 times the formaldehyde exposure to my colleagues, because I'd go back, unwrap the cadavers, and do all these wonderful drawings of the cadavers. And then during medical school, suddenly I'm not outside anymore, so my vitamin D levels plummet. And I get the message that fat is bad for you. And so I follow a very, very low fat vegetarian diet, which for me turned out not to be a good thing. The casein in dairy, the gluten in these whole grains, and eggs, I now know are triggers for my autoimmune processes. So certainly there were toxin exposures, there were inadequate vitamin D, huge amounts of stress, inadequate sleep. And then more recently, I came to realize that another factor that I had overlooked for many, many years was that when I was 9, my mom was pregnant, and when her baby was born, my little sister, my sister died within 24 hours, which was a very traumatic event for my mom, for my dad and for my family. I don't think we ever fully recovered from that loss. And so that would certainly qualify for a very severe adverse childhood experience. And we know that people with adverse childhood experiences have a markedly higher risk of autoimmune disease, of all these mental health problems, because the normal pituitary adrenal axis in terms of being able to regulate your hormones has been disrupted, and so that has profound impacts on everything in your life.
I see so many mirrors in speaking with you, so I'm just processing all this information. What age were you when you first experienced depression?
13.
13. So quite young, and depression comes from the gut. None of this obviously is coincidence that it kept kind of
You
snowballing.
know,
What age were you? You said you were 9 when your little sister passed?
so I was 9 when my sister died. My mom had severe, severe postpartum depression, and that was difficult. Difficult, for my dad. My mom had a stroke when she was 36, and that was difficult. She, was away for a month, then came home, and we had a hospital bed downstairs for her, and then she eventually got stronger and was able to have a really pretty normal life. Couldn't quite do the vigorous farm work to the same level that she had in the past, but of course this had a huge impact on me in high school. My extracurricular activities were gone, and I was running the household, and there's a lot of growing up you had to do at age 16.
Yeah, sounds like it. And what inspired you to go to med school? That your mom?
Well, no, no. I was an artist. I went to Drake University studying fine arts, and then I realized, okay, I'm going to have to either get a master in fine arts, but I'm not sure I can really make money doing that. So maybe I'll go. So I went back and did something called a Strong Campbell Interest Survey to reevaluate what I should do for my career. And that said, get a PhD, be a vet, or be a physician. So I thought, oh, I'll be a vet. I like, and so I went up to Ames, started continuing to do my science, animal science, applied, and my veterinary colleagues in the lab I was working at said, you ought to apply to medical school too. So I applied to both vet school and medical school, got into both, and was having a hard time deciding. And my grandfather had said, if you can't decide, take out the silver dollar, flip it, write down what decision is going to be for heads, flip it, and you'll immediately know when you see the results, your stomach will be thrilled, or you'll feel a pit in your stomach, like, oh shit. I really didn't want to do that.
Yeah.
And so I finally I had a date. I flipped my coin. The vet school won, and I felt disappointed. So I thought, okay, I'm going to medical school. So then I went to medical school, and I remember I'm the farm kid, and I see all these students who are so full of themselves, and I think, man, I really made a mistake. But I just took out this big loan to go to medical school. I'll just have to get over it. But for years, it's like, man, I would have been so much happier as a vet. Now, in retrospect, I am so glad I'm a physician, because I would not have been able to have the strength to do the veterinary work, and it would have been harder for me to ultimately figure out everything that I did in order to recover. So,
Yeah.
So God whispered into my ear and said, no, you can't go to vet school. You have to go to medicine.
Yeah. Wow. And you mentioned that during your MS journey, you were on a paleo diet for 5 years, and then you had the aha moment to kind of do a more intricate paleo.
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
you go on paleo because you had MS, or did you?
Well, it's pretty interesting. During medical school, fat was a problem, so I went very, very low fat. And it looks like a really great diet, beans and rice, lots of vegetables. And when I'm diagnosed with MS, at that time in 2000, the only diet out there was the Swank diet, which was a very low fat diet. So, like, okay, this looks like I'm doing the right thing. Then on my second year, my neurologist mentioned the work of Ashton Embry, whose son has MS, who advocated for the paleo diet. So I get Lauren Cordain's books and I implement the paleo diet, but I'm still going downhill. And I think, well, um, I don't know how long it takes to repair everything that has gone on. And so but at least I'm doing something. So I'm feeling okay. Like, okay, I'll just stay with the paleo diet. And at the time, it was a big change. I had to do a lot of prayer and meditation to go back to eating meat. And it was a bit of a transition to reintroduce the meat.
So funny enough, mindset was another component I was going to go into after we kind of went over the diet part of things. But so actually, we'll stick with the diet and then we'll get into prayer and meditation because I'm actually very curious about that.
Yeah.
It took you a while to introduce meat. So then this, I guess, kind of 2.0 version of your diet, could you take us through that and the
Yeah.
supplementation where it was really where you really
Yeah.
started to
So,
take
so there,
back?
a bunch of things that I'm really focused on, the nutrient wise, vitamin K, the B vitamins, minerals, zinc, magnesium, sulfur-based amino acids, and coenzyme Q. And I'm taking all about 12 different supplements. And then when I said, maybe I should see where they are in the food supply, because I'll probably get some more key nutrients this way. And so, again, that's more research. And sort of at the high level, I'm ramping up green leafy things, kale, collards, oregano, parsley, cilantro, Swiss chard. So lots of greens, 3 cups of greens, 3 cups of the cabbage, onion, mushroom family vegetables, so sulfur-rich vegetables, 3 cups of deeply colored carrots, beets, berries, things that are pigmented all the way through. More fermented cabbage, sauerkraut, kimchi, more organ meats, liver once a week. I grew up having liver once a week, and if at my household, if you complained, you got more. If you complained about chores, you got more chores. If you complained about the food, you got more, and you had to eat it before you got anything else. So you did not complain,
That's
or at
nice.
least you knew to not complain twice. That is like you just wouldn't do that. And so, and what's fascinating, Melissa, is so the supplements had slowed my decline. I'm very grateful. My electrical stimulation really hadn't done much yet, but the one thing that was very apparent very rapidly from doing electrical stimulation was it was doing really good things for my mood. It was my mental clarity improved, my mood improved. I loved doing the electrical stimulation. And I would do it to as much pain as I could tolerate. I'd be sort of sweating because I just ramped up the intensity. 10 seconds of really unpleasant, and then 20 seconds no stim, and then 10 seconds of, and my family hearing going, so it was very intense. But when I changed my diet in this very structured way, another thing that I did, which was pretty interesting, over the summer I tested, my first food sensitivity test, and I learned that I was sensitive to eggs. So I took eggs out, and now I have this very structured diet. I'm having more organ meat. I'm having a lot more greens, and we're adding in these fermented foods. And the speed of my recovery is breathtaking. It's just breathtaking. And my physical therapist says, okay, we can advance your exercises. And I'm a former athlete, so okay, I was very happy to advance, and I could do the exercises. And then my physical therapist said, it's 45 minutes of electrical current with volitional exercise will grow muscle mass. You need only 15 minutes to maintain muscle mass. And Terry, you're weak everywhere. So you can, stimulate your muscles and do exercises pretty much everywhere, just according to how much time you've got. And so that's why I, eventually got to half an hour twice a day. And then I thought, well, I'm going to take my device with me because I had a portable device. And I started wearing my device and doing isometric contractions while I was doing my current. And if I was staffing resident clinic, I had the current had to be low enough that I wasn't grimacing and sweating from pain. If I was in my office alone, I could dial it up to that level of intensity. And so it meant for 10 seconds, I couldn't do any work because I was in so much pain. But then I had 20 seconds where I could quick do a little bit of work. And then I have another 10-second jolt. And so gradually I was increasing my electrical stimulation more and more. Now, the science on electrical stimulation has since advanced so that we know, exercise, you release a lot of nerve growth factors in the brain, in your spinal cord, in all the pathways between your brain and the muscle being activated. And you release a bunch of muscle growth factors, which is why your muscles will get bigger. As I was doing all of this current, we know that it was releasing endorphins in my brain, good for my mood, and nerve growth factors, great for my mood. So this is why I just had this, it was very apparent to me that electrical current was doing something incredibly good for my brain. And I think the reason, once, my physical therapist told me that, 45 minutes, do as many muscle groups as you want. And I was like, well, I'm going to do them all. So, I was doing my belly, my back, my quads, my hamstrings, my glutes, my calves, my tibia anterioris. I didn't do my arms because my arms seem to be working pretty well. But, everything else could do with a lot of tune-up. So I wanted to get 45 minutes to each muscle group, doing isometrics, and eventually I figured out how to fit that into my day. Now, from the FDA standpoint, it's like 45 minutes a day of e-stim. That's what's approved. And so I never really told my physical therapist how many hours I was doing because I was afraid he'd take my device away.
Wow. And from when you really fine-tuned your diet and supplements to a lot of livers, a lot of greens, from that moment to when you first got on the bike, how long was that?
So that's December 26th. I get on the bike on Mother's Day, so the second Sunday in May.
Oh my gosh.
Very short. And then I think it was October 15th, we rode 18.5 miles. So that's 9 months. So it's 5 months to bike.
So you went from no real use of your legs to bike riding.
Well, we should be clear. I could still take a few steps,
Yes.
and so, and then other people have said, well, you clearly couldn't have had progressive multiple sclerosis because that doesn't happen. Your physicians had to have made a mistake. Well, fortunately, my chief of medicine at the university, my chief of staff at the VA, decided that I should do what's called a safety and feasibility trial to see if others with progressive multiple sclerosis could implement what I did. So that's the feasibility. And then do we hurt them? That's safety. And then what's the effect size? So we did that. We got 20. We wrote out the protocol for what I'd done, and then so the diet, the supplements, the meditation, mindfulness, the exercise, and the electrical stimulation of muscles. And we're able to show that, yep, people could do it. They could implement this rigorous diet. They could take the supplements. They could do, and the people who came in the study were, as a group were between cane and walker. These were seriously disabled folks. And half of them improved their walking. Now, half did not. So as a group, it stayed, the walking function was stable. But in progressive MS, you anticipate a 15% worsening every year. And so being able to offer people stability, really, really huge. We had a dramatic reduction in fatigue, improvement in quality of life, reduction in anxiety, depression, improvement in thinking, verbal thinking, and nonverbal thinking. And as I said, half the folks had improvement in walking. We wrote several grants trying to get funding to do a randomized study. I couldn't get funding to do that. So next we started studying just diet alone. We did several studies of the paleo diet, then a paleo and keto diet versus usual diet, showing that people could implement the diet and reduce fatigue, improve quality of life. And so, I mean, so that's on the research side. And then in my tribe, I've since been teaching the public how to do this stuff. And I've been teaching clinicians how to use this in their clinical practice. And we've had other people who are wheelchair dependent. There's this one young woman, former athlete, Division I volleyball player, who was wheelchair dependent. She could still do her transfers and take just a step or two. Her son was getting married in a couple of years. She really wanted to be able to walk her son down the aisle. That was her big, hairy, audacious goal, to walk her son down the aisle at his wedding. And she started doing eSTEM. She worked pretty hard. She would do an hour and a half every day. And in, I think it was 2 years, she was able to walk her son down the aisle of his wedding. And she was able to do the father-son dance. I mean, really quite remarkable. And then there's another woman from Canada who, more disabled, she could, with help, stand, pivot, and get onto the toilet. And with help, stand, pivot, and get into bed. With help. Couldn't really do it independently. She met me, started taking all of our courses so she could be part of the Q&A. And it took her 3 years, but she is now walking with a walker.
Wow.
It's extraordinary. So yes, it is work. The more disabled you are, the more work it is. The people who are former athletes who understand that discipline, understand goal setting, like, okay, this is work, but they're willing to do it, are the most successful with overcoming, really severe disability.
Now, I would love to go through the prayer and meditation component. I want to hear about it you personally, how and when you implemented it, and how frequently and what have you. And with the people you teach, their
Yeah.
implementation of it, what you tell them to do.
So during undergraduate, I learned transcendental meditation, which I did for years. And then during medical school,
December.
I quit. I don't know why. Then, when I'm diagnosed with MS, I understand that stress exacerbates this. I still don't go back to meditation. I don't know why. And now when my boss tells me I'm going to go to the traumatic brain injury clinic, and things are clearly going downhill, I discover electrical stimulation of muscles. I have this complicated supplement regimen, and I'm redesigning my paleo diet. And then I finally go like, I should go back to meditating. So I add the meditation. And keep in mind, I'm doing all this stuff. I'm adding back the transcendental meditation, and a more intensive diet, the supplements, the exercise, the stem, and I'm doing all that, Melissa, not to get better, because I know getting better is just not possible.
Oh,
I'm doing all this to keep my hands,
yeah.
because I know that I could well lose my hands, and so I'm doing all this to hang on to my hands. Now, when I'm teaching, and what we taught in the clinical trial was a mantra-based meditation, just to focus on the word in and then out. In my other clinical trials, we've done the 4-7-8 breath. Inhale through your nose to the count of 4, hold to the count of 7, exhale through a small opening in your mouth to the count of 8. We've taught forced laughter, where you set your timer on your phone at first for 30 seconds, and you just laugh, ha, ho, 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 vigorously. And then you try to go to a 60-second forced laughter, and then a 90-second forced laughter. And of course, you get to keep breathing while you are forcing your laughter. That can be very helpful. And then another meditation that I'm very fond of, and this is what I like to do to fall asleep with, is a gratitude meditation, where I go through various aspects of my life or stages of my life, and I'm thanking people. Sometimes I'm thanking my animals. I'm thanking, my horses, my dogs. Sometimes I'm just thanking my farm that I grew up with, the trees and the creeks, sort of the wild places. I might be thanking my kids, my wife, my scientific mentors. And so it's a really lovely practice to have, a gratitude practice as you're falling asleep. Um, so there are lots of ways to engage in meditation, and we talk about the various mindfulness and meditation apps and biofeedback apps that people can use. But I do think it's important to have. There's a lot of benefit to having some type of practice.
So when you do TM, do you do it for 20 minutes, and do you do that in the morning?
I will do that typically in the morning. It's really quite lovely. Often take a near infrared sauna, and I can do that as part of the sauna experience.
You are dialed.
Yeah, and then after the sauna, I'll do a cold shower, and I for a long time I did cold baths and ice baths in the evening, but then my wife said, honey, I don't like those cold legs. Could you do that in the morning?
Simple change.
So I'm like, okay.
I
So
love
cuddling is pretty nice. I didn't want to give that up, so I'm like, okay,
No,
that's fine.
that's probably the number one healing modality of them all.
Oh yeah, all that oxytocin, you want to have your cuddling. So,
Oh. And at what age were you this journey when you met your wife? And was this in med school?
well, I had to get a little older and wiser, so I had some less effective. Let me get my ears back in. Some less effective relationships during medical school and residency, and then Jack and I met. I had both kids, both my son and my daughter, and met Jack in '95. My daughter, and we had a commitment ceremony when my daughter was 18 months, and then we got legally married in 2007 after Iowa legalized same-sex marriage.
Wow, that's beautiful. And is your father still around?
No, my father died when my son was 2, and that I'm pregnant with my daughter. My son is 3, and actually I become quite ill, and have severe preeclampsia, and I'm hospitalized, and I'm getting sicker and sicker every day. And my son says, "Oh, mommy, don't worry, I'll go live with Casey and his family when you die."
You're like, thanks, buddy.
So, and what I think that is remarkable is he could tell that every day he came to see me that I was clearly getting sicker and sicker. So even at age 3, he our kids are very smart.
Yeah.
And the next day, I was sicker still, and we had a C-section, and his little sister was born.
Oh my gosh.
So she was in the NICU. I was delirious. I didn't know who I was. I didn't know anything for about 24 hours. And then I began perking up at 36 hours.
Oh, and how old are your kids now?
He's 32, and my daughter is 29.
I mean, I'm not going to say has, it's probably obvious your health journey has affected your kids. What are they doing now?
Yeah. So my son is a state senator here in Iowa, and he's a state senator.
Oh, wow. That's so
He's so
cool.
he's into politics, and my daughter is an artist. You may or may not have heard of the woman cards. They made a series of playing cards, and so uh, she and her brother are entrepreneurs, and she's the artist, and together they have a variety of ideas. So if anybody wants to check them out, you can go to the womancards.com and see these really beautiful playing cards.
I love it. I'm totally going to check that out. And I noticed when I first asked you about your wife and I asked med school, you said something about you. It was basically what I'm trying to get at. The way you responded, basically when you dated pre your wife, you said it was like a lot of things people take negatively, like, oh, dating this and that. You spun with like a very positive mindset. Like you choose your words for the better carefully because of thoughts are power.
Yeah,
So it's
absolutely. Um, I learned a lot. I made some choices that I knew I would not make the second time around.
but
So
it yeah. What
you
I'm
could you
getting
could do
at isn't the dating itself, but the way you speak, just generally, it's very, I guess, optimistic and
Mhm.
like, you choose your words
you know
carefully in a very good way for your brain.
absolutely. Between the event of your life and your response, there's a space. And
Yes.
in that space, you make a choice. And so I'm mindful that I can always make a choice to make my circumstances somewhat better. And that, you know, uh, there have been some very, very difficult times in my life with immense amount of pain and suffering. And I can look back on that with bitterness and anger, or I can look back on that and focus on what I learned, what was the benefit, and let go of the trauma and choose to frame things as a growth opportunity.
Love that. And during your whole MS journey, would you actively work on this, reframing your
Oh my
thoughts?
God,
Cutting-
it was hard work too. Let me tell you. Um, and so when I'm diagnosed, my son is 8, my daughter's 5. And by the way, by the time my son is 11, my daughter's 8, I'm in a tilt recline wheelchair. It's very clear to me that this is a progressive illness. It's going to end very badly. And I'm just trying to slow it down as much as I can. I'm also having to think deeply about how do I parent? I want those kids to grow up to be strong, resilient, emotionally successful, financially stable. And my toolbox for teaching them gets smaller and smaller because I thought I was going to be able to teach them martial arts, wilderness travel through all this physically challenging stuff. And what I realize is all I have is my choices.
Yeah.
And that um, what they're going to see me doing, what I can do, my little workouts every day, they would have more responsibility than all of their friends to help us run the household. Both my kids would complain bitterly about having to do the laundry. Like none of their friends know anything about
They better not complain twice. They'll be doing a lot of
doing
laundry.
laundry. You'll be doing more. And I'm very empathetic. Like, well, yeah, that I can see why you're really upset, but these are your chores. And my chore is to go to work as long as I can. And then they stamp their little feet like, I think you're glad you have MS so you can lecture me about chores.
Oh,
And
it,
now what is fascinating is both my kids will talk about that they saw that I was working out every single day, even though it was clearly hard. And I also talk with them now that they saved my life because I'm dealing with immense amount of pain and suffering and a trajectory that is really, really terrible. And plus, I have depression. So lots of difficult things. But I know my kids are watching, and so you can't possibly kill yourself because I can't teach them that. Well, life gets difficult, you just quit. No. I have to teach that. Yep, life gets difficult. So what? You just keep doing the best you can.
yeah.
And so I'm doing my little, I put in a little swimming pool, an endless pool. I'm doing swimming or I'm doing water aerobics, and my little mantra to myself is, "Your kids are watching. Your kids are watching. They're going to do what you're doing, and you're going to keep going on, because we will all endure loss unless you die prematurely, unexpectedly. We're all going to not get the promotion that you wanted. You're not going to get the beautiful wife that you wanted. You're not going to get the handsome man that you wanted. Your people that you love will have uh, illnesses and may die. We're all going to endure terrible loss. That's part of life. And we can teach our children how we face loss and that you still find meaning, you can still go forward. And as I was facing loss after loss after loss, that was what I was wrestling with. I have to find meaning, I have to go forward. And that meant I had to think deeply while I'm in my pool, swimming and meditating, how I'm going to keep going forward.
You really are such a sincere inspiration. I'm so moved by your journey, the way you think, and by your mind and the action implementation, because it's not easy to
It's
have
not
all
easy.
those things.
It was not easy. But if you think of your most inspiring stories that you ever read, the most inspiring movies, we're not inspired by the easy stuff.
No,
We're
true.
inspired. We're inspired by the stuff that is really hard, where success is not guaranteed, and the bigger the odds that the person's more likely to fail, the more inspiring the story. So and this is one of the things that my vets taught me when I was in the therapeutic lifestyle clinic. When I could help them reframe their current health crisis as the hero's journey, that, yep, the odds are not with you. You're more likely to fail than succeed. But what a heroic journey. You're going to inspire your children and your grandchildren, everyone around you, because you are the warrior entering the battle of your life. And that turned things around for so many of my vets. And they may still have succumbed to their illness, but now they were in their hero's journey, inspiring their grandchildren and their kids, and they were happy and content, and they had purpose and meaning.
I took TM course in December, and I've kind of
Yeah.
fallen off the TM wagon. You best believe I'm re-implementing TM.
All right, you go, girl.
Yeah, and I've had an autoimmunity hypothyroid, and I have some rosacea. I don't think rosacea is an
Yeah.
autoimmunity, but this has just been so eye-opening to
Mm-hmm.
see to hear this, um this, I guess, thought that autoimmunities keep expanding and only get worse and worse and worse. I've taken back my hypothyroid through diet, but now, health's a journey. I'm going through like another thing where I think I'm gonna have to go back on that autoimmune protocol. Are you still to this day on the diet that?
Oh, absolutely. If I fall off the diet, my trigeminal neuralgia comes on. And so it's very easy for me to stay on the diet because pain is just so intense that, like, nope. And if I eat in public and I don't prepare the food, then I'm very concerned about talking to the chef and wanting to know what what are the ingredients. And if there's a commercially made sauce or dressing, I'll skip that dish because those commercial sauces and dressings are more likely to be contaminated with something.
Wow. Well, you've got it oiled and fine-tuned like a well-oiled
Yeah.
machine at this point. And when people in what capacity do you work with your clients?
So if people go to terrywalls.com, you'll see that we have a bunch of different classes and courses that we have. On Monday, I'm going to start my next class on MS guts. We'll be talking about why gut health is so important and what we can do to improve our gut health. Then we have some courses in remyelination, some courses on the radical health upgrade. So if people sign up for my email list, terrywalls.com/email, you'll get notices about the various courses that I have, so you can sign up and register. And quite commonly, people will sign up for every course because there's live Q&A. And they'll do that for a couple of years, then like, okay, now I'm really pretty good. And so we have courses every month to every couple of months with live with course materials and live Q&A.
Wow, I want to sign up. This is
Yeah, I think you'd enjoy it.
yeah,
So if you go to terrywalls.com, you can also go to my Instagram, Dr. Terry Walls, and the link to sign up is in the bio.
amazing. Dr. Terry, thank you
Oh,
so much.
wait, I have to tell people about my clinical trials.
Oh my gosh,
Yeah,
I apologize.
no,
Thank
no,
you
yeah.
for the online courses. Now, please tell us about your clinical trials.
So we are looking for people with multiple sclerosis. And if have you have any friends or colleagues, please send them to terrywalls.com/MS study. There, you'll see a yellow box where you can click to create a survey, answering a few questions. We are looking for people with relapsing remitting multiple sclerosis between the ages of 18 and 70. You'll come to Iowa City, Iowa, complete the baseline assessments. Will then randomize you to either a ketogenic diet, a paleo diet, or you get to follow your usual diet. You come back in 3 months for some blood work, repeat assessments, and again at 24 months. There is a no contrast MRI that will let us see brain volume. We are going to enroll 156 people. We have room for another 20. And so, Melissa, I'm hoping you and your tribe can help me find that last 20. If you're already on a special diet for MS, that's perfectly fine. You just have to be willing to follow the diet to which you are randomized. So let's say you're already on a paleo diet. That's fine. If you are willing to come in and get randomized such that if you're randomized to the keto diet, you're like, okay, I'll switch to keto. And if you're already on a keto diet, you can come join us as long as you're willing to be randomized. And if you're randomized to the paleo diet, you'll go, okay, I'll eat a few more carbs. I'll do paleo. So we can follow you and see the effect of the paleo, the keto, or usual diet on quality of life, fatigue, mood, and brain structure with those MRIs.
This is amazing. I hope that people listening out there sign up, and I'm also going to make a post about this on my Instagram page because I would love to contribute to those 20 spots.
Oh, yeah. And Melissa, I'll make sure that we have all the links for you to include in your show notes.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I am beyond excited about this episode, and I'm so personally moved. So thank you so much for coming on today, and I'm excited to follow along on your courses.
Great. Thanks so much.
Thank you.